capital in order to be able to generate profits from it. So that is the fundamental difference between investors and property buyers. A person buying their first home, for example, is worried about the value they're receiving at that moment in time. A property investor is worried about the value they're going to receive and the value that they can extract from these properties. Now, why this is important in the question of whether a purchaser or investor rather should allow the utilization of their purchase price or a deposit prior to transfer or registration of the property into their name is the fact that you can utilize it to leverage a better bargaining position and to leverage a better purchase price. So to give you an example of this, if you're aware that a seller has outstanding debts with the municipalities, as an example, and they don't have the cash in order to be able to pay those debts, they are going to struggle to sell this property in the open market to a first-time home buyer that doesn't understand how this works. And a first-time home buyer would more than likely not be willing to put up cash in order to assist the seller in dealing with their affairs. Whereas an investor may very well be willing to do it, but upon certain conditions. And again, these conditions would depend on whether the purchaser or the investor is risk averse or not. So as an example, sometimes the investor might want to do it as a loan and can even register a mortgage bond over the property if need be. The purchaser can take occupation of the property as an example and can secure the payment of this deposit in one form or another, be it a reduction of the purchase price with the right of occupation, which gives it a level of security because now it actually holds the property and possesses the property. And obviously the terms of the contract. So for example, I recently did a deal where this was very much the case, and it was about R1 million deposit that was paid in order to cover debt. And my advice to the client was there's nothing wrong with doing it, but it's understanding where your risk lies. Simply paying R1 million in round number without first determining or being able to ascertain what the actual debt to the municipality is, or whatever debt you might be looking at, is important because you don't want to overpay and allow access to all your money unnecessarily. So what is the debt that's due to the municipality? Now, the second question you want to be, or the second aspect that you want to be able to address in order to mitigate your risk is when exactly this money can be utilized. So that's another example. You don't simply want to pay a deposit and from day one the money is utilized when it need not be utilized. So rates clearance figures, as an example, aren't something that you need to acquire at the beginning of the transaction. It's actually something you can start acquiring towards the end of the transaction. In fact, you probably should, bearing in mind that they expire. So you want to sort it out at a point in time when you know that the transfer is definitely going to go ahead. So when the money is actually going to be released, it's also important because you'd want to make sure that the seller signs everything that they need to sign before this money is released, because this is your money. It's still held on your behalf. So it only gets paid over to the municipality once you know for certain all transfer documents are signed. And if you had to go to court to compel the transfer, it would be a very, very easy process. And the third thing that I normally try and suggest and throw in is maybe some form of consent, so that it's not made determinable only by the conveyancer, who often is hired by the seller and might have some bias. So there might also be a requirement that the investor actually authorizes this, but that its authority or consent is not unreasonably withheld. And I think to a certain degree, if you've managed to get a better purchase price by doing this, you can mitigate your risks, and it's not necessarily a bad idea.
Right. So yes, thank you very much, Dave. Obviously it is doable, but it's just